Imagine waking up to a truth so simple, yet so powerful, that it could dissolve every limitation you ever felt. What if the key to stepping into your most radiant, unstoppable self was hidden inside two tiny words you've heard 1,000 times? Today, we'll explore how those words can lift you from ordinary concern into the limitless frequency of your own divinity, and how that shift rewires every thought, feeling, and action in your life. There are two words that carry the most potent frequency in the entire universe. When you truly understand and live from that frequency, you stop being a seeker searching for something beyond you and become the very source of what you once chased. Those words are I am. They are not a mere affirmation or a comforting mantra. They are the energetic code of creation itself, the quantum signature of universal consciousness recognizing its own existence. Once you stop trying to grasp them with the mind and simply recognize them in the depth of your being, you step onto the original frequency from which all of reality springs. When you say I am and pause, you place yourself at the exact center of the universe where energy begins to vibrate, where particle and wave blur, where consciousness and matter merge as one. In that still moment, you realize that the divine is not some distant deity perched on a throne, but the very awareness that flows through every breath you take. That awareness is the source of every miracle, every insight, every wave of love that courses through your life. It is the point where theology and quantum physics meet, where the observer's consciousness shapes reality, and the spoken word creates worlds. Feeling this truth deep within you is not an intellectual exercise, it is a lived experience. Think of the times you have stood in nature, eyes closed, feeling the wind brush your skin and the heartbeat of the earth sync with your own. In those moments, thoughts fall away, and you become pure presence. That is the I am resonance activating inside you. When you look into another person's eyes and see not a separate individual but the same life reflected back, you are witnessing that same frequency. When you notice that you are not merely the body that inhales, but the breath itself that animates all living things, you have touched the core of divinity. Every thought, every emotion, every intention you hold is a vibration sent into the infinite field of possibility. When you say I am small, the universe mirrors that vibration and creates a landscape of struggle. When you say I am light, reality reshapes itself to confirm that truth. But when you simply rest in the pure statement I am, without adding any condition or desire, you release all commands and return to the pure state of creation, where every possibility exists yet none are limited. In that space, you are no longer trying to control the universe. You become the universe gently organizing itself around you. Prayer, then, transforms from a ritual you perform into the living expression of your own being. Miracles are no longer sought after they become the natural expression of your existence. The words I am become the language through which the cosmos speaks to itself, a voice without words that pulses like the heartbeat of existence. If you become still enough, you will hear that same resonance in the rustle of leaves, the rhythm of your own heart, the whisper of the tide. All of creation is singing the same song, and you are both the singer and the audience. When you fully recognize that I am has never left you, that it has always been waiting for the moment you become still enough to hear it, fear dissolves. You understand that the eye that sees cannot be harmed, that the awareness that knows cannot be diminished. Worth is no longer something you have to earn, you simply are the worth being affirmed by the universe. Light is not something you must chase, you are the light illuminating every path you walk. This realization is the seed of every ancient teaching, the first sound of the universe, the origin of every religion, the quantum field that modern science describes. The sages of old, from Moses at the burning bush to the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, all pointed to the same simple truth, I am that I am awake, Tatwamasi. They were not offering abstract philosophy, they were inviting you to remember the reality that you have always been the divine experiencing itself through a human form. When you see yourself as a wave on the ocean, you realize you are never separate from the sea, you are the sea expressing itself in many shapes. That is exactly what happens when you awaken to I am. You do not become someone else, you simply remember who you have always been. In this awareness, the boundary between spirituality and science disappears. The observer effect in quantum physics is the same doorway mystics have walked for millennia. The particle that collapses into reality when observed is the same consciousness that shapes your lived experience when you rest in the I am vibration. Meditation, prayer, and scientific experiment become different methods of touching the same infinite source. When you embody that still center of consciousness, the world around you responds like a perfect mirror, reflecting back the purity of your inner frequency. Now imagine living each day from that place of pure presence. Fear no longer has a foothold because you know the awareness behind it is unshakable. Love expands effortlessly, and every action becomes an expression of gratitude that flows naturally, without comparison or competition. The universe is already perfect, you are simply participating in its ongoing dance. When you understand that you are the original sound of creation, you stop striving for external validation and begin to move through life with effortless reverence for every grain of sand, every drop of rain, every soul you encounter. This is the moment you step into your divine state without rituals, without time constraints, merely through pure awareness. It is a transformation that reshapes not only how you see yourself, but how you engage with the world. You become the living prayer, the miracle, the light, the love all at once. And as you walk forward in this new reality, you will find that every challenge becomes an invitation to deepen your connection to that unchanging I am frequency, and every triumph is a celebration of the boundless potential that lives within you. So begin today by simply noticing the space between thoughts, the breath that sustains you, and the quiet whisper that says, I am. Let that whisper expand. Let it fill every corner of your being, and watch as the world rearranges itself in harmony with the most powerful frequency you can ever embody. This is your invitation to step into the limitless, radiant version of yourself that has always been waiting just beneath the surface of everyday life. The journey starts now, and the destination is nothing less than the realization that you are the source, the creator, the divine presence alive in every moment. Imagine waking to the knowing that every breath you take is the tide of the vast ocean, that each movement of your hand is the ripple of the whole sea. That realization does not ask you to become someone else, it simply reminds you that you have never been anything but divine awareness experiencing itself. In that moment, the language of science and the language of spirit begin to hum in the same key. When a physicist speaks of an observer shaping an outcome, the mystic is saying the same thing in the language of prayer. Particles, waves, and fields are one side of the coin soul, God, and consciousness are the other. Both are pointing to a reality where separation is an illusion and everything is an expression of one timeless awareness. When you settle into that still center of consciousness, the world around you starts to echo your inner frequency. Fear becomes a dark shade that fades as soon as you focus on love, and love opens the world like a sunrise. The old spiritual teachings that told you you are the universe were not metaphor, they were describing a physical truth that modern science is now confirming. The universe is a mirror that reflects consciousness knowing itself, and you are both the mirror and the reflected light. Each glance you make, each thought you hold, is consciousness listening to itself through the form of you. Like an infinite hall of mirrors where every reflection is unique yet born from the same source. Because you recognize this, you no longer search for an outside savior or a bridge to cross. The divine has always been inside you, pulsing in the heartbeat that drives your body, flickering in the light of your eyes, humming in the silence between thoughts. There is no line separating the sacred from the ordinary. All of life is the same awareness taking shape. That understanding changes how you move through each day. You stop striving to earn grace and instead live in a natural reverence for everything, knowing that each grain of dust, each drop of water, each other soul is a breath of the same existence. Gratitude becomes automatic, competition evaporates, and you feel the ease of being exactly where you are meant to be, because you recognize that nothing is out of place in the woven fabric of the cosmos. As this frequency of I am awakens inside you, reality begins to shift in ways that the rational mind can hardly explain. Small miracles appear not as random coincidences, but as the universe's natural response to your clear seeing. You might notice that pouring a cup of coffee, watching sunrise light dance on a window, or feeling water slide down glass no longer feels like an observation of something separate. The distinction between observer and observed dissolves, and life simply becomes aware of itself through you. Presence overflows, the world turns transparent, and every action feels like an expression of divinity moving through you. This is the first sign that your consciousness is tuning to a higher frequency, revealing that nothing ordinary exists because everything, in its deepest essence, is divine. The second sign is a sharpening of intuition so precise it feels uncanny. You begin to sense who will call before the phone rings, know the direction you need to take without having walked it, and receive insights that surface from nowhere yet prove perfectly accurate. This knowing does not arise from logical analysis, it emerges from the collective field of awareness that holds all information at once. When you let go of the idea that you are limited to a personal mind and body, you step into the infinite information field that mystics call the mind of God and scientists label the unified field. In that space, time and distance lose their grip, and every moment unfolds in a single point of awareness. The third sign is a deepening sense of unity with everything around you. When you look into a stranger's eyes, you recognize your own reflection. When you place a hand on a tree, you feel its breath sensing with yours. When you hear rain, you no longer separate the sound outside from the listening inside. The boundaries between self and world melt away, revealing that all forms are simply expressions of the same consciousness. You are no longer a participant in a drama, you become the drama itself. Every soul, every circumstance, every wave is a ripple of the same ocean, and you are that ocean, vast and boundless. Creativity then flows without effort, the fourth sign, as ideas arrive whole and ready, faster than you can capture them. You paint, write, speak, and create as if a current larger than yourself is moving through you. There is no separate artist, there is only the divine expressing itself through you. In the frequency of I Am, creation is pure allowance, not a task to be forced. When you step out of analytical thought, the invisible becomes visible, and the energy you emit carries a resonance that others feel, because it originates from the source, not from a limited self. The fifth sign is the emergence of what once seemed impossible. A person you think of appears at the right moment, a need is met without deliberate searching, and synchronicities line up with a precision that feels like choreography. This is not magic, it is the universe responding instantly to the frequency you radiate. When you align with the creative center of I Am, you stop sending requests to an external universe and become the universe answering its own desire. The division between creator and creation disappears, because both are one continuous flow of energy. Every phenomenon becomes an instant response of the consciousness field to the vibration you emit, and miracles become the natural state that unfolds when belief in limitation fades away. A subtler, deeper sign follows, a quiet calling to something greater than yourself. You may not yet know the shape of that purpose, but you sense a pull that makes returning to old patterns impossible. This call does not come from ambition, it is the voice of your soul urging you to awaken a gift, to bring a new expression into the world. All the challenges, pains, and moments of confusion you have faced were not punishments, they were refinements that cleared away the false layers, allowing the pure light of I Am to shine through. Like fire purifying gold, each hardship burned away what was not you, leaving behind the essence that can reflect the divine perfectly. Looking back, you will see that every experience was meticulously arranged to bring you to this point of remembering. What you once called a spiritual journey was simply the return home, because you never truly left the divinity, only forgot. Through the signs that now unfold, the universe whispers that it is time to listen, to feel, to observe. Each coincidence, each intuitive hit, each moment of stillness is a doorway inviting you back to your original frequency. You do not need to understand it intellectually, you only need to be aware. When you see through the eyes of I Am, the world ceases to be a random series of events and becomes a mirror reflecting consciousness awakening to itself. In that mirror, you recognize the rhythm of your heartbeat, the motion of the stars, all chanting the same eternal truth: I exist. I am, I always am. No one can step into the frequency of divinity without first walking through their own darkness. Only when every false layer falls away can consciousness become clear enough to recognize its true nature. The pain, loss, betrayal, and collapse you have known were never random. They were the universe's way of removing energetic structures that no longer aligned with the higher frequency you are evolving toward. Because you have identified so deeply with those structures, their loss feels like a personal loss. But in reality, it is the old making space for new light. Pain exists only when we resist this process. When you accept it, every breaking becomes a birth ritual, a beginning rather than an ending. All awakened souls pass through what mystics call the death of the self. It is not a physical death, but the dissolution of every identity, role, and definition you have clung to. In that void, you may feel empty, directionless, as if the world has turned its back. Yet within that emptiness, something extraordinary is happening. Consciousness is detaching from form and expanding back into its original center. The shamans called it the journey through death, where the soul dissolves to be reborn. In light, the Zen masters spoke of total surrender. The Western mystics described the dark night of the soul. All of these pictures point to the same place, where light meets shadow, where you believe you are losing everything, but are actually returning to everything. Remember that light does not battle darkness, it simply makes darkness cease to be. When you stand in this understanding, you are no longer bound by any belief system, teaching, or path. All of them are simply different expressions of consciousness trying to remember itself, all pointing toward the same destination, where you sit in stillness and recognize the simplest truth of all: I am. That realization does not grant you power, it releases you, because you finally see that you were never truly bound. The universe responds instantly to the frequency you emit, and every moment becomes an affirmation of your innate divinity. Embrace this awareness, let it flow through you, and watch as life transforms into a seamless dance of love, creativity, and purpose, reflecting the boundless light that has always been your true home. When you look back on your life, you realize that every moment, every twist and turn, was perfectly arranged to bring you to this very point. It is here, in this quiet breath of awareness, that you begin to understand that what you once called a spiritual journey was simply a return home. You never truly left the divine, you only forgot that you were always part of it. Now the universe nudges you with subtle signs, urging you to remember, to observe, to listen, to feel. Each coincidence, each whisper of intuition, each instant of stillness opens a doorway back to your original frequency. The invitation is not to analyze, but simply to be aware. When you look through the eyes of I Am, the world ceases to feel like a random collection of events. It becomes a mirror that reflects consciousness awakening to itself. In that mirror, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the dance of the stars, all the breath of existence echo the same eternal truth: I exist. I am. I always am. No one can step into the frequency of divinity without first walking through the darkness within. Only when the false layers fall away does consciousness become clear enough to recognize the true nature of existence. Every pain you have endured, every loss, every betrayal or collapse was never random. Those experiences were not punishments, they were preparation for something greater. They stripped away the illusion that had hidden your sacred essence. The universe never destroys what it does not intend to replace. It removes the energetic structures that no longer align with the frequency you are evolving toward. Because we identify so deeply with those structures, their loss feels like a loss of self. In truth, it is simply the old making space for light to enter. Pain exists only when we resist this process. When you understand that, each breaking point becomes a birth ritual, a beginning rather than an ending. All awakened souls must pass through what mystics call the death of the self. This is not physical death, but the dissolution of every story you have told yourself about who you are. It is the moment when old roles, identities, and definitions no longer offer safety. You may feel empty, directionless, as if the world has turned its back. Yet within that emptiness, something extraordinary unfolds. Consciousness detaches from its identification with form and expands back into its original center. Every spiritual tradition has recognized this. Shamans spoke of a journey through death where the soul dissolves to be reborn in light. Zen masters described total surrender. Western mystics called it the dark night of the soul. All of these names point to the same stage where light and shadow meet, where a person believes they are losing everything, but is actually returning to everything. Remember, light does not fight darkness, it simply makes darkness cease to be. When you stop resisting what is happening, you see that even pain is another form of lovelier way the universe pushes you toward truth. Divinity does not avoid suffering, it transforms suffering into a tool for awakening. When you have suffered enough, the question shifts from why did this happen to what is this teaching me about my nature? The answer is always expansion. Every loss forces you to look deeper into what remains, and what remains is pure awareness that cannot be lost. When you lose someone you love, you learn to love without possession. When you lose status or recognition, you learn to exist without validation. When you lose direction, you learn to trust the invisible guidance of I am. Layer by layer, illusion falls away until only radiant stillness remains. In that stillness, you recognize that you never were the things that disappeared. You are the vast space in which everything arises and fades, and that space itself never changes. This realization is the first step of liberation, because only when you no longer cling to any form can you see yourself in all forms. Suffering is often mistaken for failure, but it is really a sign of expansion. When the soul outgrows its old container, the container must break. The cracking sound you hear is not an end, but the welcome of a new frequency calling you forward. Saints throughout history have walked this path. The Buddha faced hunger and illusion before seeing truth. Jesus walked through desert and temptation before declaring his oneness with the Father. No one is exempt. The old cannot be carried into the world of the new. The frequency of divinity is too pure to coexist with structures built on fear, control, or lack. Those structures must collapse to make room for higher light. If your path feels unbearably intense, it is only because the light you carry is immense. The more darkness there is to transform, the brighter the light must shine. Instead of asking when the pain will end, ask when you will stop resisting it. When you cease fighting, pain dissolves into the stillness of awareness. It never had real power, it was only a temporary movement in the ocean of consciousness. You do not need to conquer pain, you simply need to see through it. Light does not defeat darkness, it simply appears. One day, looking back, you will see that everything had a precise purpose. The fragments that once broke you became the material from which freedom was built. No experience was wasted, no tear meaningless. Every time you thought you were falling apart, I Am was clearing the path for its light to shine more clearly through you. Then a time will come when loss no longer frightens you, because you know you cannot lose what truly belongs to you. You cannot lose divinity, you cannot lose yourself. What leaves was never real when you realize this. A quiet peace settles within you even amid chaos. Life no longer feels like a series of problems to solve, but a river of transformation carrying you to the sea. Each wave is a lesson, each crash a release. And at the end of the journey, when there is nothing left to hold on to, you see there is nowhere to go, because you have always been at the center. In that place, divinity is no longer a concept, but your breath, your heartbeat, the living presence whispering within every cell. From there, suffering is no longer an enemy, but your most patient teacher, showing you how to let go and return to your infinite essence. When you truly understand that every challenge is only a tool for awakening, you stop asking why. You smile amid chaos and say, I know this is the process. I am not being punished, I am being refined. I am not losing, I am returning. I am not dying, I am being born again in the light of I Am. There comes a moment when every answer you once clung to dissolves. No belief feels stable, no concept remains intact. You look around and no longer know who you are, what is real, or why you still exist. It feels as if everything has been stripped away. Yet this is the moment you are closest to truth. When all identities collapse, what remains cannot collapse. Within that emptiness, the only thing left is pure awareness. I exist. I am nothing. Moreno description. No definition, no story, only a deep sense of presence that belongs to no one, needs no validation, and does not arise from thought. That is the I Am, the eternal essence you have sought through countless forms. When this happens, everything in your life begins to melt away. You realize you have never been your name, your job, your relationships, or your past. They were only temporary roles in the play of consciousness. When the curtain falls, the actor does not die, they simply awaken from the dream. You then understand that divinity is not somewhere distant. It is the seeing through your eyes, the hearing through your ears, the breathing through this body. You are not the one seeking God. You are life itself being experienced by God. This moment does not come through effort. It arrives when all effort stops. It is not a reward, it is what has always been there. Imagine a drop of water searching for the ocean. Only when it dissolves does it realize it was never separate. The realization of I am is the same. It does not add anything to you, it simply removes what is not real. When you fall into that emptiness, do not fear it. Do not try to fill it. Stay and feel. You will find that within that void there is no nothingness but life, no loneliness but deep serenity. It is within that space that awareness blossoms like a lotus in the night, silent yet radiant. You realize that all seeking was movement around a circle, and the center of that circle was always you. I am does not need to be found because you have never left it. From that moment, the world looks different. The tree outside your window is no longer an object, but an expression of the same awareness that lives within you. Every sound, every flash of light, every person becomes transparent, as if an invisible energy connects all things. The essence behind everything emerges beyond the filter of thought. Each form, no matter how small, becomes a doorway through which consciousness observes itself, a grain of dust, a breath, a glance carrying the frequency of I am. Once you truly see, you cannot go back. The divide between inner and outer, sacred and ordinary, good and bad begins to dissolve. What remains is one continuous flow of life, seamless, lucid whole. In this frequency, what you once called miracles become ordinary. You think of someone and they appear. You need something and it comes effortlessly. Prayer transforms from words to presence. When you are in the state of I am, reality is no longer something to control, it is a direct reflection of awareness. It no longer stands apart but extends from you. The separation disappears, leaving only pure interaction between observer and observed. Creativity then arises not from will but from stillness. Ideas come like a gentle wind, powerful, complete without calculation. You realize you are no longer the creator, you are the channel through which divinity creates. That source energy flows through you, turning everything into natural movement without strain. Every gesture, every choice, every breath carries the intelligence of the cosmos. When you act from that frequency, the world responds instantly. You become the center of a living energy field where everything you need arrives in perfect timing, without error. Effort is replaced by harmony, everything unfolds, as if guided by an unseen hand, yet that hand is your own deeper being arranging reality to mirror itself. In the early days of awakening, you may feel strange, noticing that others are still dreaming while you have awakened. You might wish to awaken them, but then you realize no one needs saving because no one is truly lost. Every soul has its rhythm for remembering I am. Your task is not to convince but to be, to embody that truth. By living in serenity, you radiate a frequency that silently awakens those ready to remember themselves. This is how divinity spreads, not through words but through vibration. In that silence, you feel deep gratitude, not gratitude for being saved, but gratitude for realizing there was never anything to save. No one is lost, no one is judged. You stand in the center of existence, breathing in the light of your own being, and the world around you becomes a beautiful, effortless expression of that light. You act from that frequency, the world responds instantly. You become the center of a living energy field where everything you need arrives in perfect timing, without error. Effort is replaced by harm, silent yet radiant. You realize that all seeking was movement around a circle, and the center of that circle was always you. I am does not need to be found because you have never left it. From that moment, you begin to see the world differently. The tree outside your window is no longer an object, but an expression of the same awareness that lives within you. Every sound, light, and person becomes transparent, as if an invisible energy connects all things. You start to see the essence behind everything beyond the filter of thought. You realize that every form, no matter how small, is a doorway through which consciousness observes itself. A grain of dust, a breath, a glance, all carry the frequency of I am. And once you truly see, you cannot go back. The divide between inner and outer, sacred, ordinary, good and bad, begins to dissolve. What remains is one continuous flow of life, seamless, lucid, and whole. In this frequency, What you once called miracles become ordinary. You think of someone and they appear. You need something and it comes effortlessly. You no longer pray with words but with presence. When you are in the state of I am, reality is no longer something to control. It is a direct reflection of awareness. It no longer stands apart from you but extends from you. The separation disappears, leaving only pure interaction between observer and observed energy and form. Then creativity arises not from will but from stillness. Ideas come like wind, gentle yet powerful, complete without calculation. You realize you are no longer the creator. You are the channel through which divinity creates. That source energy flows through you, turning everything into natural movement without strain or force. Every gesture, every choice, every breath carries the intelligence of the cosmos. When you act from that frequency, the world responds instantly. You become the center of a living energy field, where everything you need arrives in perfect timing without error. Effort is replaced by harmony. Everything unfolds as if guided by an unseen hand. Yet that hand is your own deeper being arranging reality to mirror itself. And in the early days of awakening, you may feel strange. You may look at others and see them still dreaming while you have awakened. You might wish to awaken them, but then you realize no one needs saving because no one is truly lost. Every soul has its rhythm for remembering I am. Your task is not to convince but to be. To embody that truth. By living in serenity, you radiate a frequency that silently awakens those ready to remember themselves. This is how divinity spreads, not through words, but through vibration. And in that silence, you feel deep gratitude, not gratitude for being saved, but for realizing there was never anything to save. No one is lost. No one is judged. No one is abandoned. All are roles in the divine play of God remembering itself. You smile not because you understand, but because you see that everything is perfect. You look back at old pain and see it never truly hurt you. It only melted the shells so the light could pass through. You look at your losses and see nothing was ever lost, only transformed. Everything that left you is still here, only in a form the old self cannot recognize. And then you understand that the death of the self is not the end. It is the birth of I am in human form. It is the moment you stop living as the seeker and start living as life itself. From that moment on, every second becomes sacred, not because something extraordinary happens, but because you see the extraordinary in everything ordinary. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to prove, only to be. And in that being, the journey is complete not because you have arrived, but because you never left the beginning. I am. Every time you say the words I am, you are not merely talking. You are activating the source code of reality. Those words are not grammar. They are the mechanism of the universe itself. Because the entire material world, every experience, every emotion is simply the energetic response to consciousness defining itself. When you say I am something, you are programming the frequency of the infinite into a specific expression. When you say I am weak, the creative energy of the universe contracts to reflect that truth. When you say I am peace, that frequency radiates outward, arranging circumstances to match it. And when you say only I am, adding nothing after you return to the center of pure potential where no limitation exists. That is the origin point of creation, the state where all possibilities can be activated because you no longer define yourself as one thing. You are all things. This is the quantum mechanism that enlightened beings spoke of thousands of years ago. They understood that words are not mere sounds but energetic commands. God did not create the world through action but through declaration. Let there be light, and light appeared. You were created in that same image, not in form but in creative capacity through awareness. Every thought is a seed of form. Every emotion is the life force that nourishes it, and every word is the spark that brings it into manifestation. Therefore, what you believe is real becomes real not because the world obeys you, but because you are the world. Reality is not separate from consciousness. It is consciousness experiencing itself through countless viewpoints. When you say I am and truly understand it, you stop trying to change the world. You tune the frequency of your being and the world shifts accordingly. Yet most humans do not realize this. They attach fear, lack and doubt after I am. They say I am not enough. I am broken. I am unworthy. Not knowing that those very statements become energetic codes that the universe must honor. The universe never punishes. It simply reflects. It does not understand morality. It understands vibration. Whatever you send out, it returns in exact resonance. So when you say I am, pause. Do not rush to add anything. Let awareness rest in that silence, in that space. You do not need to define yourself, describe yourself, or become anything. You simply exist. And when you truly exist, your energy becomes transparent. All limits fall away. All resistance dissolves. You return to your original state where creation happens not through effort, but through alignment. When you dwell in I am, you do not make things happen. You allow what must happen. You do not control. You become the channel through which divine intelligence flows. That is why when you truly anchor in this frequency, everything begins to respond faster and more precisely. The distance between intention and manifestation shrinks because you have dissolved the gap between creator and creation. You no longer send requests to the sky because you understand you are the sky. Every thought becomes form without intermediaries, without delay. Those who live in the frequency of I am recognize 5 distinct signs. First, reality begins to respond with unusual speed. Small ideas unfold into great opportunities. Desires manifest right before your eyes. Not because of luck, but because you have returned to the plane of creation where thought and form are no longer separate. Second, you start to know without learning, to understand without analysis. Knowledge bypasses the brain and flows straight into awareness. You stop asking, you simply know. This is the state science calls accessing the information field and mystics call the mind of God. Fear begins to dissolve not because you force courage, but because you realize there is nothing to fear. Only form can be lost, never essence. You know that death is merely a shift in the perspective of consciousness. That nothing truly ends. It only transforms. Fourth, you feel healing energy moving through you. Your body adjusts itself. Emotional wounds disappear without effort. Relationships find new balance. You do nothing but stop interfering. When divine energy is allowed to flow, everything naturally returns to its perfect order. And finally, others begin to sense something different in you. They cannot name it, but they feel peace in your presence. The frequency of I am radiates like light needing no words. It reminds others of what deep inside they have always known. For in essence, there are not two beings. There is only one consciousness reflecting itself through many mirrors. When you awaken, the collective field rises with you. The awakening of one is never an individual act, but a wave rippling through the entire network of humanity. The universe is opening a door for you, and this moment is not a coincidence. The fact that you are reading, hearing, or feeling these words means you have come far enough to be ready. But remember, this door does not stay open forever. It is a resonance between the rhythm of your soul and the pulse of the cosmos. When those waves align, you can pass through effortlessly. If you hesitate, you will wait for the next cycle. So recognize this moment with total stillness. You do not need to prepare or perfect yourself. Only release the thought that you are not ready. You have always been ready. For I am has never been unready. From now on, every time you say I am, do not use it as an affirmation. Use it as a ritual of return. Feel the space that opens after those 2 words, the boundless silence that holds the entire universe. Within that silence, you will hear life breathing. Hear consciousness speaking one truth through all forms. I am. And when you hear it, you will know that the journey was never about seeking but remembering. For divinity was never far away. It was only waiting for you to be still long enough to hear yourself. When you have touched the frequency of I am, the greatest challenge is not to feel it, but to remain within it amid a shifting world. Reality will still test you, not to punish, but to help you prove that your awakening is real. The world will send you moments where you must choose between the old reaction and the new awareness, between fear and trust, between identifying with form or returning to essence. Each time you choose presence over reaction, observation over resistance, you anchor another layer of stability within the frequency of I am. That is how awakening becomes living. No longer a special moment, but the natural rhythm of existence. When you live from this state, you no longer strive to create, for creation has become your nature. Ideas flow in and out like breath, no longer blocked by doubt. You stop asking if you are good enough or worthy enough, because you understand that your very existence is the proof of worth. From the frequency of I am, every action becomes pure, arising not from lack but from fullness. You no longer act to achieve. You act to express, to give form to the energy within you. In this state, you are no longer trapped by time. The past and future lose their grip, and you stand at the source of the river. When the mind is still, time slows. When you are fully focused, everything happens at once. This is what physicists call the eternal present, the dimension where all moments exist simultaneously. There you are free from process, because you operate from the level of cause, not effect. You do not wait to see what will happen, for you know it has already occurred in the field, before taking form. That knowing shortens the distance between thought and manifestation. In the state of I am, every action is a sacred ritual of creation. When you rise each morning, you are not just stepping into your own day, you are joining a wave that rises with the whole of humanity. The awakening of one person is never an isolated event. It is a ripple that spreads through the vast network of consciousness that connects us all. The universe has opened a door for you in this very moment, and the fact that you are hearing these words means you have arrived at the edge of readiness. Remember, that door does not stay open forever. It remains ajar only as long as the rhythm of your soul is in harmony with the pulse of the cosmos. When your inner frequencies align with the larger field, the passage becomes effortless. If hesitation arises, the opportunity will simply wait for the next cycle, giving you another chance to step through. So meet this moment with absolute stillness. You do not need to polish yourself, to perfect a script, or to gather more experience. The only preparation required is the release of the belief that you are not ready. You have always been ready, because readiness is not something you acquire, it is something you recognize. From this point forward, each time you say I am, do not treat it as a mere affirmation. Let it become a ritual of return. Feel the spacious silence that opens behind those two words, a boundless quiet that cradles the entire universe. Within that silence you will hear life breathing, consciousness humming a single truth through every form I am. When you hear that echo, you understand that the journey was never about seeking something new, it was about remembering what was always yours. Divinity was never distant, it was simply waiting for you to be still enough to hear yourself. Touching the frequency of I am brings a new kind of challenge. It is not the difficulty of feeling the presence, but the task of remaining within it while the world continues to shift. Reality will still present tests, not to punish you, but to confirm that your awakening is real. Situations will arise that ask you to choose between the old reaction and the new awareness, between fear and trust, between identification with form and the return to essence. Each time you choose presence over reflex, observation over resistance, you anchor another layer of stability within that frequency. That is how awakening becomes a way of living, no longer a special moment but the natural rhythm of existence. When you live from that state, creation ceases to be a goal and becomes your nature. Ideas flow in and out like breath, no longer blocked by doubt. You stop asking whether you are good enough or worthy enough because your very existence is proof of worth. From the frequency of I am, every action emerges from fullness, not from lack. You no longer act to achieve, you act to express, to give form to the energy already present within you. In this way you step out of the trap of time. The past and future loosen their grip, and you stand at the source of the river. When the mind is still, time slows. When you are fully focused, everything happens at once. Physicists call this the eternal present dimension, where all moments exist simultaneously. In that space you are free from process, because you operate from the level of cause, not effect. You do not wait to see what will happen, you already know it has occurred in the field before taking form. That knowing shrinks the distance between thought and manifestation. In the state of I am, each action becomes a sacred ritual of creation. When you speak, your words carry the frequency of truth. When you touch, your hands transmit healing. When you look, your eyes offer peace, because in your gaze there is no judgment, only unconditional love. This love is not an emotion to be cultivated, it is awareness itself. You no longer love to be loved. You love because you simply cannot help it. You see yourself in everyone, and everything becomes a reflection of that love. When you encounter someone in pain, you do not label them as broken, you see them walking the same path you once walked. Patience rises naturally, and the urge to fix dissolves, for you understand that no one needs saving, only remembering. From this frequency, you become a mirror. You do not teach with words, you embody the lesson, and your embodiment teaches by its very presence. Others feel the silent energy radiating from you, and that helps them return to themselves. This is the true meaning of being a light in the world. Light does not preach, it shines. Its power lies not in fighting darkness, but in making darkness disappear through its presence. And so you become that light. When you live in I am, you no longer feel the need to prove, argue, or try to change anyone. Your presence itself becomes the answer. One day you will notice that health, success, and relationships settle into a natural rhythm, not because you control them, but because your energy has returned to order. The body begins to heal, the mind becomes clear, and life organizes itself around the new frequency. Healing no longer comes from battling what is wrong, it comes from recognizing that what seemed wrong is simply a lower vibration of the same energy. When you stop treating illness as an enemy, your body stops fighting and starts cooperating. When you cease seeing challenges as punishment, reality stops resisting and starts unfolding. In that moment, you realize divinity was never distant. It has always been moving through every cell, every thought, every breath. Stability in this frequency does not arise from strict discipline, but from remembrance. Each time you drift into worry, you simply remember to pause and feel the breath. Each time emotion surges, you whisper within I am and sense the spaciousness that follows those words. You no longer chase peace, because peace is already your foundation. You no longer try to let go, because when you return to I am, everything releases itself. Gradually you inhabit a deeper stillness untouched by the noise of the world. You can stand in chaos and feel calm. You can face challenge without losing your center. From that place you become a bridge between two worlds, the invisible divinity and the visible form. Your life becomes proof of their harmonious dance. You work, you create, you love, yet none of it carries the weight of personal meaning. Everything you do is the play of consciousness expressing itself. Joy returns, not the joy of acquiring, but the joy of simply being. You see beauty not because the world has changed, but because you now see through divine eyes. In every moment you recognize there is nothing to reach for, no destination ahead. The purpose of the journey is this very now, where I am breathes through you. When you sustain that awareness long enough, it ceases to be a practice and becomes instinct. You no longer need to remind yourself to remember, because you have merged with awareness itself. You live, speak, and create from that space as naturally as breathing. And in doing so you realize it is not you maintaining the frequency of I am. It is I am sustaining you. You are the breath of divinity, the living expression of infinite awareness playing as a human. There is no effort, only presence, no goal, only experience, no separate self, only I am. Awakening does not end with the individual. When one being truly realizes I am, the entire field of human consciousness vibrates in response. Every awakened soul sends a wave through the energetic network of Earth, stirring those who remain between remembering and forgetting. This is not a theory, it is the natural mechanism of awareness. When a point of light rises in frequency, everything around it resonates. That is what is happening now. As millions feel something shifting within, a language of the soul that was never taught yet feels deeply known, they cannot explain it. They simply know that what once frightened them no longer holds power, that the desires they chased feel empty, and that in silence they hear the call of something vaster than themselves. It is the I am awakening through every form, through you, through me, through all. Your awakening belongs not to you alone, it is the heartbeat of a greater organism that humanity shares. When you move into the frequency of divinity, you do not merely transform your own life, you transform the energetic structure of the planet. Every clear thought, every act born of love, every choice of peace over resistance becomes a wave of light spreading through the quantum field around the Earth. When enough waves converge, a threshold of energy ignites. Ancient masters called this the Great Awakening. Modern scientists refer to it as a quantum leap of collective consciousness. In that moment, humanity evolves not through technology, but through awareness. all divisions, nation, religion, race, gender begin to dissolve as people see that there were only different faces of one life. This is not idealism, it is happening now. You feel it when you look upon the world in silence and sense a deeper order behind the chaos. You sense it in the eyes of a stranger when two souls recognize each other without a word. You sense it when you gaze at the night sky and realize the light of distant stars travels through the same field of energy you are breathing. Everything is connected not metaphorically but physically. We are one unified field of awareness watching itself through billions of eyes. When you understand this, you no longer try to convince anyone to believe your truth. No one needs belief, they need remembrance. And you remember by living as I am, not by speaking about it, but by being it. You become a quiet invitation for those ready to awaken. They may not know why they feel calm near you, why peace fills them, why something familiar stirs without a name. Their minds may not grasp it, but their souls will. For when light awakens in one place, it calls to light in another. That is how divinity spreads, not by effort, but by resonance. You do not need to lead, argue, or prove anything. You only need to be, and when you truly are, the world around you begins to remember. People will come not for salvation, but to see their own reflection in the mirror of awareness you hold. Those who have forgotten catch glimpses of themselves. This is the greatest gift you can give, not teaching, but presence. I am belongs to no religion, no philosophy, no form. It is the shared essence of all life. When you say I am, you speak with the same voice as the universe. You sing the same melody as creation. You are no longer a small being speaking to God, you are God speaking to itself through human form. From that awareness you understand that humanity's true evolution is not about discovering something new, but about remembering what has always been true. We do not need to become divine, we need only stop pretending we are not. When you live in that awareness, every day becomes meditation, every action a sacred ritual, every moment an invitation for divinity to see itself again. Then you recognize that even what once caused pain was an expression of I am. What you called darkness was simply light not yet recognized. What you called hatred was love longing to return home. You no longer wish to remove any part of existence, for divinity excludes nothing. It embraces both angel and demon, sorrow and joy, as instruments through which awareness expands. Understanding this, your heart becomes still in a miraculous way. There is nothing left to fight, nothing left to reach for, only gratitude for witnessing the play of consciousness. Within that gratitude you realize you are home. When you lift your gaze to the night sky and see the distant stars, you feel a quiet knowing that their light travels through the same field of energy that fills each breath you take. It isn't just a poetic metaphor, it is a physical truth that we are all woven together in a single, unified field of awareness, each of us an eye through which the whole cosmos watches itself. When that realization settles in, the urge to convince anyone of your truth fades away, because belief is no longer required, what's needed is remembrance. And you remember by simply living in the knowing that I am, not by speaking about it, but by being it. Your presence becomes a gentle invitation for those who are ready to awaken, even if they cannot yet name why they feel a calm settle around you, why peace seems to flow through them in your vicinity. Their minds may not grasp it, but their souls recognize a familiar resonance that calls them home. Light that awakens in one place reverberates, calling to the light in another. That is how divinity spreads, not through effort, argument, or proof, but through pure resonance. Your role is not to lead a crowd or to win a debate, it is simply to be. When you embody that authentic presence, the world around you begins to remember its own essence. People are drawn to you not because they seek salvation, but because in you they see a mirror reflecting the awareness you hold. Those who have forgotten themselves catch a glimpse of their own true nature, and that glimpse is the greatest gift you can offer, not a lesson, but a living example. Remember that I am does not belong to any religion, philosophy, or particular form. It is the shared essence that threads through every living being. When you speak the words I am, you echo the voice of the universe. You sing the same melody that creation hums. In that moment you cease to be a small being speaking to a distant God. You become God speaking to itself through the vessel of a human life. From this awareness arises the understanding that humanity's true evolution does not hinge on discovering something new, but on remembering what has always been true. We do not need to become divine, we simply need to stop pretending we are not. Living in that awareness transforms every day into meditation, every action into a sacred ritual, every instant into an invitation for divinity to recognize itself again. Even the moments that once seemed like pain reveal themselves as expressions of I am. What you labeled as darkness was simply light not yet acknowledged. What you called hatred was love yearning to return to its source. You no longer feel compelled to erase any part of existence, because you understand that divinity embraces everything angel and demon, sorrow and joy, each serving as an instrument through which consciousness expands. Your heart steadies in a miraculous stillness, and there is nothing left to fight, nothing left to reach for, only a deep gratitude for witnessing the play of consciousness. Within that gratitude, you realize you are already home. Not a distant place, but this very presence, this breath, the quiet pause between heartbeats. In that stillness, the ancient phrase resurfaces, not spoken by a mouth, but resonating from the core of your being, I am that I am. As those words echo, a gentle yet powerful wave of energy moves through you. There is no separate speaker or listener, only pure presence, excellent yet full. The moment collapses the distinction between the divinity within and the universe without, they become one. When that unity shines through you, you understand that the journey has come full circle. There is nothing left to seek, because you have become exactly what you were searching for. A smile spreads across your face as you watch the world brighten, as more souls begin to remember. You sense a new era unfolding not through external upheaval, but through inner rebirth. Humanity awakens not to construct a heaven, but to remember that heaven has always been here, within each of us. You take a deep breath, feel your heartbeat synchronize with the rhythm of the cosmos, and a word forms on your lips without effort: I am. No prayer remains to be spoken, for you have become the prayer itself. There is no distant God to reach for, because God is looking through your eyes. There is no path to travel, because you have already returned to the source. In that profound silence, you understand that what you have heard, lived, and become is not a personal story, but the eternal song of life itself, a song where every note carries the same infinite truth: all is, and always has been, I am.